Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Settle in, find a comfortable position, and allow the weight of your day to soften. Let go of any lingering thoughts, any worries or plans, and simply allow yourself to be here in this quiet space. Tonight, we are not traveling to the familiar hills of Rome, nor the sands of Egypt. Our journey takes us eastward, to a city that for 1,000 years was the glittering heart of the world, the inheritor of Rome's legacy, a bastion of civilization known as Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire. It is a world of shimmering gold mosaics, of complex politics and deep faith, of dazzling wealth and profound danger. We will not be exploring it as emperors or generals, but as individuals caught in its powerful currents. We will feel the dust of the racetrack, hear the whispers of the imperial court, and try to uncover secrets that were meant to be lost to time. So, take a slow, deep breath, and as you exhale, let the noise of your world fade away, replaced by the distant echoes of the past. Our journey begins now in the very heart of the city's lifeblood. At the center of its passions, its politics, and its spectacle, it begins in the Hippodrome. Segment 1. What it was really like for a Byzantine charioteer. Imagine yourself awakening, not to the gentle light of a quiet morning, but to the cool, damp air of a stone chamber beneath the stands of the greatest arena in the world. The air is thick with familiar scents, the sharp, earthy smell of horse, the oiled leather of harnesses hanging on the walls, the sweet aroma of hay, and a faint, ever-present dust that seems to coat everything. This is your world. You are a charioteer, an auriga. Your muscles ache with a deep, familiar weariness. The training is relentless, a daily ritual of strengthening your arms, your back, your grip. Your hands are calloused and scarred, testimony to 1,000 hours of wrestling with the taut leather reins of 4 powerful, barely tamed horses. You are not a nobleman indulging in a sport. You are a professional, an athlete whose body is both a tool and a liability. One strained muscle, one moment of weakness could mean the end of your career or your life. The rhythm of your life is dictated not by the sun, but by the roar of the crowd. Even now, hours before the races, you can feel it more than hear it. A low, resonant vibration that travels through the stone floors. The collective anticipation of 100,000 souls. They are the reason for your existence. They scream your name, wear your colors, and wager their fortunes on your skill. And your colors are everything. You are not merely an independent contractor. You belong to a faction. Perhaps you are blue, the Venatori, traditionally favored by the aristocracy. Perhaps you are a green, the Prasinoi, the faction of the common people. These are not simply sporting teams. They are vast, complex organizations with political and social power that extends far beyond the hippodrome. They are part political party, part street gang, part social club. To the people in the stands, your victory is their victory. Your loss is a public shame. The emperor himself might favor one faction over the other, and the fate of an entire political policy can sometimes feel as if it rests on the outcome of your race. You feel this pressure as you begin your preparations. You do not do this alone. Grooms and stable hands move with quiet efficiency around you. Their motions practiced and sure. They check every inch of your chariot. It is a masterpiece of minimalist engineering, deceptively simple. A light wooden frame, 2 wheels, and an open back. It is built for one thing: speed. There is no room for comfort, and even less for safety. They test the axle, running their hands along the wood, feeling for any hint of a crack. They examine the leather straps of the harness, testing their strength. A single weak point, a single frayed strap is a fatal flaw. You don your protective gear. A leather helmet, perhaps reinforced with bronze. A tunic of thick, padded linen, tightly bound around your torso. The colors blue or green are emblazoned across your chest. You are a living symbol. You wrap the long leather reins around your waist. A technique that gives you the leverage needed to control or straining horses with your body weight. It also ensures that if you fall, you will almost certainly be dragged to your death. This is the brutal calculus of your profession. Tucked into your belt is the one tool you pray you never need. A sharp knife, your only hope of cutting yourself free in a crash. The time comes. You lead your horses from the stables into the tunnel that leads to the starting gates, the coursers. The low hum of the crowd grows into a deafening roar. The air in the tunnel is electric with tension. Around you are the other charioteers, your rivals. You may share a meal with them in the evening, but out here, they are the obstacles between you and survival. You exchange hard, knowing glances. There's no malice, only a shared understanding of the risks you are all about to take. The gates swing open and you emerge into a wall of sound and blinding light. The hippodrome of Constantinople unfolds before you, a vast, sprawling U-shape of white marble, packed with a riot of color and humanity. The sun glints off the gilded roof of the Kathisma, the imperial box where the emperor and empress sit in judgment. Down the center of the track runs the spina, a decorated barrier adorned with priceless statues and obelisks plundered from every corner of the ancient world. At each end of the spina stands a turning post, the meta. These posts are the most dangerous points on the track. They are where races are won and where lives are so often lost. You guide your chariot to your assigned gate. The horses are agitated, tossing their heads, their breath misting in the air. You murmur to them, your voice a low, steady sound in the chaos, trying to keep them calm. Your own heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic rhythm matching the thunder of the crowd. An official gives the signal, a white cloth drops, and the world explodes. The first few seconds are a desperate struggle for position. The chariot lurches forward, the floor vibrating violently beneath your feet. Dust and grit are thrown into your face. The noise is immense, the thunder of dozens of hooves. The creaking and groaning of 16 wooden chariots. The roar of the crowd becoming a physical force, pressing in on you. Your focus narrows. The world becomes the backs of your horses. The reins tight in your hands, and the chaos of wheels and bodies around you. You approach the first turn, the first meta. This is where the pack is tightest. You pull on the reins, leaning your entire body into the turn, trying to hug the post as closely as possible without striking it. To your left, a chariot takes the turn too wide. To your right, another driver tries to cut inside, his wheel just inches from yours. The air is thick with shouted curses and the shriek of wood against wood. Lap after lap, the rhythm of the race takes over. The long straight run down the side of the spina is a mad dash for speed. The horses are at a full gallop, their powerful muscles working in unison. You can feel the strain in your arms, the burning in your shoulders. Your world is a blur of motion and color. You see the faces in the crowd as a smear of pale ovals. You see the flash of green or blue banners waving frantically. Then, disaster strikes ahead of you. 2 chariots become entangled. You see a wheel splinter, a horse go down in a tangle of leather and limbs. The chariot flips, throwing its driver onto the track. A cloud of dust erupts, obscuring the view. There is no time to think, only to react. You wrench the reins, pulling your team hard to the side, narrowly avoiding the pileup. You hear a sickening crunch, but you cannot look back. You must not look back. The race continues. Those who fall are cleared away by attendants who rush onto the track, their work swift and impersonal. A life celebrated just moments ago is now simply an obstruction to be removed. You are constantly aware of the other drivers. You know their styles. One is reckless, another is cunning. You watch for the subtle shift in a rival's posture that signals he is about to make a move, to try and force you into the wall or cut you off at the turn. This as much a psychological battle as a physical one. 7 laps, That is the tradition. 7 laps of skill, endurance, and sheer luck. As you round the final turn, you might be dueling for the lead. Your horses are tiring, foam flying from their mouths. Your own breath comes in ragged gasps. The roar of the crowd is now a single deafening note of pure ecstasy and tension. You urge your horses on with your voice, with every fiber of your being, pushing for that last ounce of speed. Perhaps you have won. The sound of the crowd washes over you, a wave of adoration. You take a victory lap, your arm raised. The emperor may bestow upon you a palm branch and a purse heavy with gold. In this moment, you are a hero, a living god to the thousands who scream your name. Statues might be raised in your honor. Poets will write of your bravery. But as you guide your panting, exhausted horses back towards the stables, the adoration begins to fade, replaced by a colder reality. The nobles who watched from their cushioned seats still see you as little more than a gladiator. You are an entertainer, a low-class performer who gambles with his life for their amusement. The vast sums of money you can earn are a constant lure, but they can vanish as quickly as they came. And if you had lost, or if you had been the one to fall, oblivion would be just as swift. Another young, hopeful driver would take your place tomorrow. Your name, once screamed by thousands, would become a forgotten footnote in the long, brutal history of the hippodrome. As you finally find quiet in the stables, the sense of horse and leather returning to the foreground, you are left with this strange paradox. You are one of the most famous men in the Byzantine Empire, and yet you are utterly disposable. Your life is a constant, dizzying ride on the edge of a knife between unparalleled glory and an unmarked grave. And tomorrow, you will have to do it all over again. Let us leave the dust and thunder of the racetrack behind, but remain for a moment within the world of the hippodrome. For it is here, in the shadow of the great arena, that another, even more remarkable story begins. The factions of the blues and the greens were not just supported by the populace. They were employers. They maintained the stables, the chariots, the horses, and all the other entertainments that accompanied the races. One such man was a bear keeper for the green faction, a humble position in the sprawling ecosystem of the games. When he died, he left behind a wife and 3 young daughters with no income and no prospects. The eldest of these daughters, a small girl with sharp, intelligent eyes, was named Theodora. Her story should have ended there, lost to the anonymity of poverty. But Theodora possessed a will and an intellect that could not be so easily dismissed. Segment 2. Empress Theodora. From the stage to the throne. Theodora and her sisters were thrust onto the stage at a young age. This was not the respectable theater of classical drama. but the raucous, often crude world of mime and burlesque, designed to entertain the masses between chariot races. It was a life lived in the public eye, yet at the very bottom of the social ladder. Actresses in the eyes of Byzantine law and society were infamous. They were seen as morally corrupt, and their profession was synonymous with prostitution. Historical accounts, written by her enemies, paint a lurid picture of Theodora's time on the stage. They speak of performances that were daring and scandalous, designed to captivate and provoke. But even in these hostile descriptions, we can glimpse something more. We see a performer who was not merely an object of spectacle, but a master of it. She understood the crowd. She knew how to hold their attention, how to command a room with her presence. These were skills honed not in a palace, but on the grimy stages of the empire. She learned to read people, to anticipate their desires, to survive by her wits. Her life was itinerant and precarious. She traveled the empire from city to city, part of a world of public performance and private arrangements. It was during a stay in North Africa that she experienced a profound change. The exact nature of this change is a loss to us, but it seems to have been a spiritual awakening. She abandoned her former life and, upon returning to Constantinople, settled into a small house, living a quiet life as a wall spinner. It was here, in this period of quiet obscurity, that fate intervened. Justinian was the nephew of the reigning emperor, Justin. He was the heir to the throne, a man of immense power, intelligence, and ambition. He was also, by all accounts, utterly captivated by Theodora. We do not know the precise circumstances of their meeting, but it is clear that what he saw was not just a woman of legendary beauty, but a mind that matched or even exceeded his own. He found in her a partner, a confidant, someone whose counsel he valued above all others. But there was a chasm between them, a social and legal gulf that seemed impossible to cross. A law dating back to the first Roman emperor, Augustus, expressly forbade a man of senatorial rank from marrying an actress. To the rigid and hierarchical Byzantine court, the idea of the heir to the throne marrying a woman like Theodora was not just scandalous. It was unthinkable. Yet, Justinian was resolute. He was a man who saw the world not just as it was, but as he wished it to be. He persuaded his uncle, the Emperor Justin, to repeal the ancient law. It was an unprecedented act, a clear signal that Justinian would not be bound by convention. Soon after, he married Theodora. She, the former mime from the city's underbelly, was given the rank of patricia, a noblewoman. And when Justin died in the year 527 and Justinian ascended to the throne, Theodora was crowned alongside him, not as a mere consort, but as Augusta, Empress, co-ruler of the Roman world. Her transformation was absolute. She moved through the great palace with the same poise and command she once showed on the stage. She embraced the elaborate ceremony of the court, understanding its power to project authority. But she was never just a figurehead. Justinian's name is attached to a famous codification of law, the Justinian Code, but Theodora's influence is woven throughout it. She championed laws that offered new protections for women, increasing their property rights, prohibiting forced prostitution, and establishing convents for former prostitutes to find refuge. She who had known the harsh realities of a woman's life at the bottom of society now used her power to help those she had left behind. She was Justinian's most trusted advisor, his partner in all things. He never made a significant decision without consulting her. While he was a visionary, a dreamer who sought to restore the empire to its former glory, she was the pragmatist. Her sharp, worldly intelligence grounded his grand ambitions. Their partnership was the stable center of a tumultuous world, and never was this more critical than during the darkest days of their reign. It began as so many things in Constantinople did in the Hippodrome. In January of 532, tensions between the blue and green factions, exacerbated by high taxes and unpopular officials, boiled over. A routine chant during the races, Nika. Nika, meaning conquer or win, morphed from a sporting cheer into a revolutionary roar. The factions, usually bitter rivals, united in their hatred for the government. The city exploded. The mob poured from the Hippodrome, and for 5 days, Constantinople was consumed by fire and rebellion. The great church of Hagia Sophia was burned to the ground. Palaces of nobles were looted. The city's guard was overwhelmed. The rebels declared a new emperor and laid siege to the great palace itself. Inside, Justinian and his advisors were trapped. Panic set in. His most seasoned generals advised the only sensible course of action: flight. Ships were waiting in the harbor, ready to carry the imperial court to safety, to abandon the capital and hope to reconquer it later. The treasury could be loaded. Their lives could be saved. Justinian, for once, wavered. The arguments were logical. Survival was paramount. It was then that Theodora rose to speak. Imagine the scene. A room filled with powerful, frightened men, the smell of smoke in the air, the roar of the mob audible even through the thick palace walls. And in the center, this woman who had risen from nothing remained perfectly calm. She did not shout. Her voice, we can imagine, was steady and clear. She told them that this was not the time to debate whether a woman should be bold in the presence of men. She said that for an emperor to choose to become a fugitive was an unbearable thing. She would not flee. I pray I may never be separated from this purple, she said, referring to the imperial robes, and that I may not live that day on which those who meet me shall not call me your majesty. Then she delivered the line that would echo through history. She looked at her husband, at his terrified court, and said that while flight might bring them to safety, it was not a life worth living. For my part, she concluded, I agree with the ancient saying that purple makes a fine shroud. Her words were like a blade cutting through the fear and panic. They reminded them of who they were, of what the imperial office meant. To run was not just to lose a city, but to lose their honor, their very identity. Shamed and inspired by her courage, Justinian and his generals found their resolve. The plan to flee was abandoned. An order was given for a brutal, decisive suppression of the revolt. The emperor's loyal troops, led by the generals Belisarius and Mundus, stormed the hippodrome where the rebels were gathered. The ensuing massacre was terrible. The great arena, once the site of spectacle and sport, fell silent under a wave of violence. But the Nika riots were over. The throne was secure. Justinian and Theodora had survived. More than that, they had prevailed. And everyone knew that it was the Empress, the former actress, the daughter of a bear keeper, who had saved them. Her courage had turned the tide. From that day forward, her position not as consort, but as co-ruler, was never again in doubt. She had proven that she was not merely wearing the imperial purple, she had earned it. Her journey from the stage to the throne was complete, a testament to a will of iron forged in the harshest of circumstances. Theodora's will saved an empire, but the Byzantine Empire did not survive for 1,000 years on will alone. It survived through diplomacy, through trade, through its immense wealth, and through a mastery of technology that often left its enemies bewildered and terrified. Just as Justinian and Theodora rebuilt the city after the Nika riots, bigger and more magnificent than before, the empire constantly had to rebuild its defenses, facing threats from all sides. To the east, the Persian Empire, and later, the caliphates. To the north, Slavic and Bulgar tribes. And from the sea, the constant threat of naval assault. It was in the crucible of naval warfare that the Byzantines deployed their most famous, most secret, and most terrifying invention. It was a weapon that defied the conventional laws of nature, a substance that seemed to be a form of liquid rage, a mystery that has puzzled historians for centuries. It was known to its enemies simply as Greek fire. Segment 3. Greek fire, the secret weapon of the Byzantines. Imagine yourself a sailor on an Arab dhow in the late 7th century. Your fleet is part of a massive armada sailing to besiege the great city of Constantinople itself. Confidence is high. Your ships are numerous. Your men are brave. And you believe victory is inevitable. As you approach the Sea of Marmara, the Byzantine fleet emerges to meet you. Their ships, known as dromons, are sleek and fast, but they are outnumbered. Victory seems within your grasp, but then you see it. From the prow of the lead Byzantine ship, a bronze tube, often shaped like the head of a lion or a dragon, swivels towards your vessel. There is no sound of a catapult, no flight of arrows. Instead, with a roaring noise, a stream of liquid flame erupts from the tube. It is not like a normal fire. It is a torrent of sticky, burning fluid that hurtles across the water and smashes against the wooden hull of your ship. Panic erupts. The substance clings to the wood, to the sails, to the rigging. Water is thrown on it, but instead of dousing the flames, the water seems to make them burn even hotter. The fire spreads with terrifying speed, consuming everything it touches. Men who are hit by the liquid are set ablaze, and leaping into the sea offers no escape. The substance continues to burn on the surface of the water, creating a horrifying spectacle of a burning sea. The air fills with thick black smoke and the terrible sounds of burning wood and screaming men. The psychological effect is devastating. It is as if the enemy is wielding hellfire itself. This is not warfare. It is a divine and terrifying judgment. This was the power of Greek fire. For centuries, it was the ultimate superweapon of its age, a trump card that saved Constantinople from naval sieges on more than one occasion. But what was it? The truth is, we do not know for certain. The formula for Greek fire was one of the most jealously guarded state secrets in history. Its production was confined to a single trusted family, and knowledge of its composition was passed down from generation to generation under penalty of death for revealing it. The secret was so well kept that eventually it was lost entirely. What we know comes from the cryptic and often contradictory accounts of Byzantine and Arab chroniclers. They describe a thick, liquid substance projected through a siphon or pump mechanism. The chronicler Theophanes tells us it was invented around the year 672 by a Christian refugee from Syria named Callinicos of Heliopolis. He brought his invention to the Emperor Constantine IV, and it was deployed with immediate and spectacular success against an Arab fleet. Historians and chemists have spent centuries trying to reverse engineer the recipe based on these historical clues. We know some of the likely ingredients. The base was almost certainly a petroleum distillate, likely crude oil or naphtha, which was readily available from natural seeps around the Black Sea. This would account for its ability to float and burn on water. But this was more than just burning oil. The accounts describe it being projected with a thunderous noise and smoke, suggesting a pressurized system. The siphon mechanism probably used a pump to force the liquid through the bronze nozzle. But how was it ignited? Some theories suggest a chemical reaction. Perhaps quicklime was a key ingredient, which heats to an incredibly high temperature when exposed to water. The mixture might have been preheated in a cauldron and then pumped. Or perhaps the ignition was spontaneous upon contact with seawater. Other potential ingredients mentioned in texts include pine resin, which would make the liquid sticky, ensuring it clung to ships and sailors. Sulfur was almost certainly involved, contributing to the noxious smoke and the intensity of the fire. Some have even suggested saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder, which would have added an explosive projective force. The complete system, the chemical formula, the pump mechanism, and the trained technicians who operated it was a complex piece of military technology. The operators of these siphons were highly specialized soldiers, valued for their skill and their discretion. The secret was not just the recipe, but the entire process of deployment. The Byzantines went to extraordinary lengths to maintain their monopoly. The Emperor Constantine VII, in a manual written for his son in the 10th century, explicitly stated that the formula for Greek fire was revealed by an angel to the first Christian Roman emperor. He warned his son that to give the secret away to foreigners would be a profound sin against God and the empire. This story was, of course, a piece of deliberate propaganda, a way of wrapping the state secret in a holy mystery to discourage anyone from even trying to uncover it. Their efforts were successful, though their enemies often captured Byzantine ships and even the siphons themselves. They were never able to replicate the liquid. The Arabs, formidable chemists in their own right, developed their own incendiary weapons, but nothing that matched the terrifying effectiveness of true Greek fire. The weapon's use was primarily defensive, a tool to protect the heart of the empire. It leveled the playing field when the Byzantine navy was outnumbered, turning a quantitative disadvantage into a qualitative and horrifying victory. The final mystery of Greek fire is how it was lost. There was no single moment as the Byzantine Empire began its long, slow decline. Its resources dwindled. The complex industrial and chemical processes required to produce the weapon may have become too expensive or difficult to maintain. By the time of the Fourth Crusade in 1204, when Western knights sacked Constantinople, Greek fire seems to have fallen out of use. Perhaps the family who held the secret had died out, or the knowledge was lost during one of the city's many internal power struggles. By the 15th century, with the rise of cannon and gunpowder, such a weapon became less critical. The age of chemical warfare gave way to the age of ballistics. The secret of Greek fire, once the salvation of an empire, simply faded into memory, leaving behind only the ghost stories of its enemies and a tantalizing chemical puzzle. that endures to this day. It remains a potent symbol of the Byzantine genius for survival, a secret weapon whispered about in the dark, a fire that burned so brightly it consumed its own formula, leaving nothing but legend behind. We have walked in the footsteps of a celebrity athlete and traced the impossible rise of an empress. We have plumbed the depths of a military secret. But to truly understand the world of Byzantium, we must now leave the roar of the public spaces and enter the gilded cage of the great palace. Here, in the heart of imperial power, influence was not always wielded by generals with armies or nobles with ancient lineages. Power was a subtle current flowing through channels of access, information, and trust. In this unique environment, another group of individuals rose to positions of incredible authority. They were men who, through a brutal and transformative act, were set apart from the rest of society, becoming a class unto themselves. They were the power brokers of the palace, the keepers of secrets, the loyal and indispensable servants of the emperor. They were the court eunuchs. Segment 4. The power broker. Life as a eunuch in the imperial court. To our modern minds, the concept is jarring. But in the world of the Byzantine court, eunuchs were a fundamental and accepted part of the social and political structure. Their existence stemmed from a very particular, if cold, logic. An emperor needed a vast bureaucracy to run his empire. He needed officials, ministers, chamberlains, and tutors for his children. But he was surrounded by powerful families, all with their own ambitions, all capable of plotting to place their own son or nephew on the throne. A eunuch, however, could not father children. He could not create a dynasty to rival the emperors. This biological fact was seen as a guarantee of loyalty, stripped of the ability to further a family line. A eunuch's ambition could be channeled entirely into the service of the state and the emperor who employed him. He was, in theory, the perfect servant, intelligent, dedicated, and no threat to the line of succession. Their path to this life was often tragic. Many were boys from poor families, sold by their parents into this fate. Others were captured in wars, particularly from the Caucasus region, and castrated before being sold in the slave markets of Constantinople. Still others were political prisoners or the sons of a defeated rival, mutilated to ensure their family line could never again challenge for power. It was a brutal initiation into a life of paradox. They were physically marked and often socially stigmatized outside the palace walls. Theologians debated their nature. They were seen as a third gender, not quite men, but not women either. This ambiguous status, however, gave them a unique advantage within the highly structured world of the court. Their most important role was as guardians of the imperial private sphere. They controlled all access to the emperor and empress. The Grand Chamberlain, or Propositus Sacri Cubiculi, was almost always a eunuch. This was one of the most powerful positions in the entire empire. He was the emperor's gatekeeper, deciding who got an audience and who did not. He managed the emperor's household, his wardrobe, his finances. He was the first person the emperor saw in the morning and the last he saw at night. He heard the secrets whispered in private chambers and was privy to the monarch's most unguarded thoughts. This proximity to the imperial person was the ultimate source of their power. Imagine yourself as one of these figures. You move through the shimmering, mosaic-lined corridors of the great palace, not with the swagger of a soldier, but with a quiet, observant grace. You wear fine silk robes, distinguishing you as a high-ranking courtier. Your voice, which never deepened, is a marker of your status. You understand the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that define court life. You know which general is secretly ambitious, which noble family is in financial trouble, which foreign ambassador is trustworthy. Information is your currency, and you are its master banker. Their influence extended far beyond the palace walls. Because they were often highly educated, taught rhetoric, law, and history, they excelled as administrators. Eunuchs ran vast government departments, managed the imperial treasury, and served as powerful diplomats sent to foreign courts. Their lack of family ties was seen as a bulwark against corruption, though, in reality, many amassed enormous personal fortunes. Some even rose to the highest ranks of the military. The great general Narses, who served under Justinian, was a eunuch. His success challenged the stereotype of eunuchs as soft or effeminate, proving that strategic brilliance was not dependent on traditional masculinity. They were also prominent in the church. Unable to become priests, they could still hold high administrative positions within the patriarchate, the center of the Orthodox faith. Many patriarchs of Constantinople, the most powerful religious figures in the empire, kept eunuchs as their closest advisors. But this life of power and wealth was lived under a constant shadow. They were always outsiders, defined by what had been taken from them. They endured the physical consequences of their castration, which could include health problems and a different aging process. They faced the scorn of those who saw them as unnatural, and their power, however great, was entirely dependent on the emperor's favor. A fall from grace could be swift and absolute. The eunuch, who was the emperor's most trusted confidant, one day could be exiled, stripped of his wealth, or executed the next. Their world was one of immense subtlety and silent struggle. They built networks of influence not through marriage and children, but through patronage and carefully cultivated alliances with other eunuchs. They were a brotherhood of circumstance, navigating a world that both needed and reviled them. The life of a court eunuch was the ultimate Byzantine contradiction. It was a path to power paved with personal sacrifice. They were guardians of the imperial family, yet could have no family of their own. They were the most loyal servants, yet were often the most ruthlessly ambitious. They lived at the very center of power, embodying the strange, complex, and often brutal logic of an empire that would do anything and demand any sacrifice to ensure its own survival. The charioteer in the dust, the Empress on the throne, the secret of the fire, the eunuch in the corridor. Each is a thread in the rich, complex tapestry of Byzantine life. A life of spectacle and shadow, of unshakable faith and cold pragmatism, of brutality and astonishing beauty. And now, our journey through Constantinople comes to an end. The echoes of the cheering crowd, the whispers of the palace, the roar of the sea fire, they all recede, fading back into the quiet of the centuries. We leave behind the struggles and triumphs of that distant world. The charioteer, whose fame was as fleeting as his life was perilous. The Empress, who proved that courage and intellect could surmount any origin. The engineers of a fire so secret it was lost to time. The eunuchs who wielded immense power at an immense personal cost. Their world was so different from ours, governed by rhythms and realities we can barely comprehend. A world of constant uncertainty, where survival itself was a daily victory. But as you lie here now, safe and comfortable, let the distance of time be a source of peace. The challenges of your own day, whatever they may be, can be set aside. The noise of the present can be replaced by the deep, quiet stillness of the past. There are no races to be won tonight, no empires to be saved, no secrets to be kept. There is only the gentle pull of slumber, the simple comfort of your bed, and the quiet of this room. Allow your mind to drift. Let go of the stories. Let go of the details. And hold on only to the feeling of calm, the steady, measured rhythm of history. A gentle lullaby carrying you now towards a deep and restful sleep. Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Allow your body to feel heavy and supported and still. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to solve. The world outside, with its demands and its pace, can now begin to fade away. Your only task for the next 2 hours is to listen, or to not listen at all. To simply let the story wash over you. A gentle tide of words to carry you into a deep and restful sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us along a path not of asphalt or steel, but of silk and dust and dreams. We travel the Silk Road, not as a grand adventure, but as a slow, sprawling network of human endeavor, a fragile thread connecting vast and distant worlds. For centuries, this was the artery of the old world, carrying not just precious goods, but ideas, beliefs, and the very seeds of culture across continents. We will begin our travels by feeling the grit of the road beneath our own feet, experiencing the profound hardship of the men who guarded these treasures. We will then trace the route back to its very beginning, following the epic tale of the diplomat whose perilous journey first blazed the trail. From there, we will explore the ghosts of cities swallowed by the sand, lost worlds sleeping beneath the desert, and finally, we will find ourselves in the vibrant heart of a Silk Road metropolis, a city shimmering with the wealth and knowledge of a dozen civilizations. So, take a slow, deep breath, and another. Let the story begin. Our journey starts not on a map, but with the feel of rough-spun wool against your skin and the immense, silent weight of the sky above. Segment 1. Why you wouldn't last a day as a caravan guard. Imagine yourself now. The sun is not yet visible, but the eastern horizon is a pale, bruised purple. The air is cold, thin, and carries the scent of dust, of sleeping animals, and the faint, smoky tang of last night's dung fire. This is the beginning of your day. It is the beginning of every day. You are a caravan guard, a Bactrian perhaps, or a Sogdian, or a man from the high plains, hired for your toughness, your resilience. Your name does not matter much out here. What matters is your spear, the short sword at your hip, and the unwavering watchfulness in your eyes. You rise not from a bed, but from a thin wool blanket laid upon the hard-packed earth. Your bones ache, not the sharp ache of a new injury, but the deep, familiar, grinding ache of exhaustion. It lives in your shoulders, your lower back, your feet. It is your constant companion, more loyal than any dog. Around you, the caravan is slowly stirring, a low murmur of voices, speaking a half-dozen languages. The soft, grumbling protest of the camels as they are prodded to their feet. The rhythmic clink of harnesses and the creak of leather. These are the sounds of your world. There is no leisurely breakfast. You chew on a piece of stale, hard flat bread, its texture like tough leather. You might crumble some of it into a wooden bowl with a splash of hot water to make a thin, unsatisfying gruel. If the merchant is generous, there might be a handful of dried dates. Their sweetness, a brief, shocking luxury on the tongue. You drink water from a goatskin bag. It is tepid and tastes of leather, but it is life. You drink slowly, rationing even now, for you do not know when you will find a reliable well again. your duty begins. The caravan master, a shrewd man with eyes that seem to miss nothing, gives his orders in short, clipped phrases. The merchants, wrapped in their finer robes, watch over the loading of their precious cargo. Bales of silk, shimmering even in the faint light, worth more than you could earn in 10 lifetimes. Chests of lacquerware, sacks of rhubarb and cassia bark, bronze mirrors and fine ceramics. Your job is to protect this, to protect it from the bandits who haunt these lands and from the desperation of hungry men. Your life is worth less than a single bolt of that silk. You understand this arrangement perfectly. It is a simple, brutal calculus. And then the walking begins. The caravan moves out, a long, slow-coiling serpent of men and beasts, and you walk. You do not ride the camels, the few horses. They are for the cargo and the wealthy. You are part of the engine, a living, breathing component, and your fuel is the monotonous rhythm of your own 2 feet. Step, 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 step. The sun climbs. The pale purple of dawn burns away, replaced by a vast, merciless dome of blue. There is no shade. The landscape stretches out before you, an endless tableau of pale earth and rock. The dust, kicked up by hundreds of feet and hooves, creates a perpetual, hazy cloud that coats your throat, your eyes, your skin. You can taste it, feel its grit between your teeth. The heat builds. It is not a gentle warmth. It is a physical presence, an oppressive weight that presses down on your head and shoulders. The air shimmers above the ground, creating mirages of water that your mind knows are false, but your parched body still yearns for. Sweat soaks your tunic and then dries, leaving stiff, white patterns of salt. The leather straps of your gear chafe your skin raw. The silence of the desert is profound. It is broken only by the plodding of the camel's soft feet, the creak of the wooden frames on their backs, and the whisper of the wind. Hours pass with no sound but this. Hours pass with no change in the scenery. The mountain range on the horizon seems to never get any closer. The sun seems to hang motionless at its zenith. This is a battle not of swords, but of the mind. The monotony is a kind of madness. To pass the time, you count your steps. You hum a tuneless song from your village, the memory of it faint and distant. You watch the back of the man in front of you, his shoulders swaying in time with his stride. You become an expert in the subtle language of the camels, their groans, their sighs, their stubborn refusal to move. A brief stop at midday. The sun is at its most brutal. You huddle in the narrow shadow, cast by a camel, sharing your meager shade. More hard bread, more leathery water, The merchants might drink a little tea. You watch them, your face a mask of indifference. Envy is a useless emotion out here. It saps your strength. Then the walking resumes. Step, step, step. The afternoon sun beats down from a new angle, just as relentless. Your mind becomes a dull, empty space. You think of home, of a warm meal, of the face of your wife or child. But the memories are like old frescoes, faded and crumbling. This road is your only reality. The ache in your feet is your only truth. And always you are watching. Your eyes constantly scan the horizon, the rocky outcrops, the shimmering line where earth meets sky. Every shadow could be a threat. A distant bird could be a scout. A glint of sun on rock could be the flash of a hidden mirror. A signal. This is the ever-present, low-humming anxiety of the guard. It is not a sharp, sudden fear, but a constant, wearing tension that tightens the muscles in your neck. You and the other guards walk at the edges of the caravan, a loose, protective cordon. You exchange few words, but you understand each other. A glance, a slight nod of the head. It is enough. Perhaps today, nothing happens. Perhaps it is just another day of sun and dust and walking. But you have seen what can happen. On a previous journey, you came upon the remains of a less fortunate or less vigilant caravan. The broken wagons, the scattered, worthless debris, the dark stains on the sand, and the stark, silent warnings left for those who followed. You do not dwell on the image, but it is always there in the back of your mind. It is why you grip your spear a little tighter when the landscape offers too many places to hide. The journey is not always through the desert. The Silk Road is a path of extremes. You may find yourself trading the searing heat of the Taklamakan for the biting cold of the Pamir Mountains. Here, the challenge changes. The air grows thin, making every breath a conscious effort. The path becomes a narrow, treacherous ledge carved into the side of a cliff. 1,000-foot drop, just a single misstep away. The cold is a living thing. It seeps through your wool cloak, through your tunic, and settles deep in your bones. At night, the water in your flask freezes solid. A blizzard can descend with terrifying speed, wiping out all visibility, burying the path in snow, turning the world into a swirling vortex of white. Here, the danger is not a bandit's blade, but a slippery rock, a sudden avalanche, the creeping, deadly numbness of frostbite. The suffering is different, but it is constant. As dusk begins to settle, a campsite is chosen, a place with some defense, perhaps, or near a brackish well. The camels are made to kneel. The cargo is carefully unloaded and stacked. A perimeter is established. Fires are lit using the precious dried animal dung you carry with you. The smell of cooking is simple. A pot of millet or barley boiling over the fire. Maybe a few tough scraps of dried mutton are added to the pot if supplies are holding. You eat your portion quickly, silently. Around the fire, the merchants might talk of profits, of markets in Samarkand or Kashgar. The cameleers will talk of their animals. You and the other guards sit slightly apart, cleaning your weapons, staring into the flames. Your talk is of the road, of the watch schedule for the night. The responsibility for protecting the cargo does not end when the sun sets. If anything, it sharpens. You will take a turn on watch, perhaps for 2 or 3 hours. You walk the perimeter of the camp, a lonely silhouette against the firelight. The desert, which was vast and empty by day, is now filled with sounds. The cry of a night bird, the skittering of some small creature, the moan of the wind. Every sound is a potential threat. Your imagination populates the immense star-dusted darkness with waiting enemies. Your senses are stretched to their limit. This is a different kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of absolute focus. When your watch is over, you return to your blanket. Sleep does not come easily. The ground is hard. The air is cold. Your mind replays the endless walk of the day and anticipates the endless walk of the day to come. You drift into a light, uneasy slumber, your hand never far from the hilt of your sword. This is your life. Day after day, week after week, month after month. It is a life stripped down to its most essential elements. Walking, eating, watching, sleeping. It is a life of immense physical hardship and mental endurance. The pay you were promised, the reason you are here, feels like a distant dream. The only reality is the next step and the one after that. You are a single anonymous thread in a vast and ancient tapestry, a forgotten guardian of the Silk Road. And as you finally fall into a shallow, dreamless sleep, the only certainty you have is that before the sun rises again, you will be on your feet and you will do it all over again. Segment 2. Zhang Qian, the diplomat who forged the Silk Road. Every road has a beginning. Every well-trodden path was once an unknown wilderness, first crossed by a single, determined traveler. The path our caravan guard walks, a path worn smooth by 1,000 years of commerce and hardship, was first charted for his world, not by a merchant seeking profit, but by a diplomat on a mission for his emperor. Let us now rewind the scroll of time. Let the dust of the caravan settle and journey back to the 2nd century BCE, to the magnificent court of the Han dynasty in China. Here, in the sprawling capital of Chang'an, the great Emperor Wu sat on the dragon throne. His empire was vast, prosperous, and cultured. But to the north and west lay a persistent, existential threat. The Gongnu, a powerful confederation of nomadic peoples. The Gongnu were masters of the steppe. Their horsemen were swift and ruthless, raiding Han territory for grain, silks, and slaves, then melting back into the endless grasslands where the Han armies could not effectively follow. For decades, the Han had tried to appease them with tribute-fine silks, rice, and even princesses for marriage. But the raids continued. Emperor Wu, a man of immense ambition, grew tired of this humiliation. He sought a final solution, a strategic masterstroke. He had heard whispers, old tales of a people called the Yuzi. They had once been driven from their lands by the Xiongnu and now lived somewhere in the far, unknown west. The emperor reasoned that their hatred for the Xiongnu might equal his own. An alliance could create a formidable pincer, crushing the nomads between them. But this was only a theory, a rumor from a distant land. To turn it into reality, he needed an envoy, a man of incredible courage, loyalty, and fortitude, a man who would volunteer to walk into the vast, uncharted territory that the Han considered the realm of barbarians, a land from which no one had ever returned with reliable information. That man was Zhang Qiang. He was not a great general or a famous minister, but a mid-ranking court official, a gentleman of the palace. What distinguished him was his powerful build, his determination, and a profound sense of duty. When the call went out, he stepped forward. In the year 138 BCE, Zhang Qiang set out from the capital. He was not alone. He led a delegation of around 100 men, a mix of attendants, guards, and his most trusted companion, a Gongnu slave or captive named Gongfu, who would serve as his guide and interpreter. He carried with him his staff of office, a long pole adorned with yak tails, the sacred symbol of the emperor's authority. This staff was his mandate, his identity. He was the hand of the Son of Heaven, reaching out into the unknown. The caravan traveled west, leaving the fertile river valleys of central China behind. They passed the Jade Gate, the last fortified outpost of the Han Empire. Ahead of them lay the unforgiving expanse of the Hexi Corridor, and beyond that, the territory of their sworn enemy. They did not get far. Within weeks of entering Xiongnu lands, the entire delegation was intercepted by a cavalry patrol. They were captured. All of them. The mission, it seemed, was over before it had truly begun. Zhang Qian was taken before the Chanyu, the supreme leader of the Xiongnu. The Chanyu was dismissive of the Han Emperor's plan. The Yus lie north of me, he is said to have scoffed. How can the Han send an embassy to them passing through my domains? If I wished to send an embassy to the southern state of Yu. Would the Han Emperor allow my men to pass through his lands? But he did not execute Zheng Qiang. Perhaps he saw value in this strong, resolute man from his enemy's court. Instead of a swift death, Zheng Qiang was condemned to a slow, living one. He was to be assimilated. He was given a Zhengnu wife with whom he would eventually have children. He was allowed to live, to move with the nomadic court as it traveled with the seasons. He was, for all intents and purposes, a prisoner, an exile. And so the years began to pass. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. The world of the Han court, with its intricate rituals, its ink-brushed scrolls, and its walled cities, must have seemed like a dream. His new reality was one of horse herds, felt yurts, and the vast open sky of the steppe. He learned the ways of his captors. He learned their language, their customs, how to survive in the harsh landscape. His delegation of 100 men dwindled. Some died, some assimilated completely, forgetting their homeland. But Zheng Qiang did not forget. Through all of this time, through a full decade of captivity, he never relinquished his duty. He kept with him, always, his imperial staff of office. That yaktail standard was a constant, silent declaration of who he was and whom he served. It was a private rebellion, an act of unyielding loyalty performed every single day for 10 years. Then, after a decade had passed, the watchfulness of his Xiongnu captors began to relax. Zheng Qiang, now a familiar figure, a man with a local family, was no longer considered a flight risk. This was their mistake. Seizing an opportunity, he escaped. He took his wife and his one remaining loyal attendant, the guide, Gun Fu, and fled. But he did not turn back east toward home. His mission was not complete. With unwavering resolve, he turned his face west once more, determined to find the Yuzi. For weeks, they traveled across a desolate and unknown landscape. They suffered from hunger and exhaustion. But eventually, they reached a kingdom the Chinese had only heard of in legends, Daiwan, in the fertile Fergana Valley. Here, Zheng Qiang was astonished. This was not a land of crude nomads. It found walled cities, sophisticated agriculture, and a people who made wine from grapes. And he found horses. Not the small ponies of the steppe, but magnificent, powerful steeds, larger and faster than any he had ever seen. These were the famed heavenly horses who were said to sweat blood after a hard gallop, phenomenon likely caused by a local parasite, but which only added to their mythic status. The king of Daiwan, hearing that the Han Empire to the east was immensely wealthy, treated Zheng Qiang as an honored guest and provided him with guides to continue his journey. He traveled further southwest into the land of the Kangju, and finally he found them. On the northern banks of the Oxus River, in the land of ancient Bactria, he found the Uesi, but it was too late. His decade in captivity had cost him his objective. The Uzi had conquered the lush Hellenistic kingdom of Bactria. They had grown content and wealthy in their new home. When Zhang Qian presented his emperor's proposal for an alliance, a war of revenge against the Zhangnu, they politely refused. They had no desire to risk their new prosperity by starting another war. The diplomatic goal of his epic journey was a failure. A lesser man might have despaired. But Zhang Qian was, above all, an observer. He spent a year in Bactria, documenting everything. He saw a civilization far more advanced than he had imagined, with cities whose architecture still bore the mark of Alexander the Great's conquests a century before. He saw goods in the marketplaces that stunned him, products from a land the locals called Shendu India. He learned of another great kingdom to the west, Angxi, the Parthian Empire. He was piecing together a map of the world that was, until now, a complete blank to the Chinese. His work done, he began the long journey home. To avoid the Zhangnu, he attempted a different route, looping south through the mountains, but fate was cruel. He was captured by the Zhangnu again. He was held for another year, but this time his captivity was cut short by chaos. The old Chanyu died, and a war of succession plunged the Zhangnu leadership into turmoil. In the confusion, Zhang Qian, along with his wife and Ganfu, escaped once more. In 125 BCE, 13 years after he had first set out, Zhang Qian finally crossed back through the Jade Gate and returned to Han territory. Of the more than 100 men who had left with him, only two returned: Zhang Qian and his faithful companion, Gangfu. He arrived at the court of Emperor Wu, a changed man, weathered by years of hardship. He had failed in his primary mission. The alliance was not to be, but he brought back something far more valuable. He laid before the emperor not a treaty, but knowledge. He delivered a detailed report of all he had seen: the city-states of the Fergana Valley, the wealth of Bactria, the heavenly horses, the trade routes leading to India and Parthia. He painted a picture of a vast and complex world west of China, a world not of ignorant barbarians, but of sophisticated kingdoms ripe for interaction. The emperor was electrified. He saw not a failed diplomatic mission, but a world of breathtaking opportunity. The desire for the powerful Western horses to improve his cavalry, the allure of trade. The strategic advantage of knowing the lands beyond his borders, all of this was born from Zhang Qian's report. Zhang Qian's personal odyssey, his decade of patient suffering, and his unwavering commitment to a failed mission had unintentionally provided the spark. He did not forge a military alliance, but he forged something far more enduring. He forged the first links in the chain of commerce and culture that history would come to call the Silk Road. His journey had turned a world of myth into a world of tangible places, creating the map that generations of merchants and the caravan guard we met would follow for centuries to come. Segment 3. The Lost Cities of the Taklamakan Desert. The path that Zhang Qian opened and that our caravan guard walks was not a single unbroken line. It was a braid of different routes, all dictated by the most unforgiving obstacle in Asia. The Taklamakan Desert, a vast oval of sand larger than Germany. Its name is often said to mean you can go in, but you will not come out. The caravans called it the Sea of Death. To cross it directly was impossible. So the Silk Road split, tracing the desert's northern and southern edges, clinging to a chain of life-giving oases. These oases were fed by rivers flowing down from the high mountains, and where there was water, there was life. Along these fragile green corridors, vibrant cities rose from the dust. They were crucial way stations, bustling hubs of trade, culture, and religion. Their existence a defiant testament to human ingenuity in the face of an overwhelming wilderness. And then, one by one, they vanished. They were not conquered by armies or burned in great wars. Their end was much quieter, much slower. They were simply abandoned. Left to the patient, inexorable advance of the desert, which swallowed them whole, burying them under mountains of sand. For over 1,000 years, they became the stuff of legend, ghost cities sleeping beneath the dunes. Let us now travel to this silent, sleeping world. Our journey is not with a caravan, but with the archaeologists of the early 20th century who, following the whispers of local treasure hunters, first rediscovered these frozen moments in time. Imagine yourself with them. After weeks of travel, you stand at the edge of a vast, undulating sea of sand. And there, emerging from the sand, like the bleached bones of some long-dead creature, you see them. The tops of wooden posts arranged in neat rows. A section of a crumbling wall, the ghost of a city. This is a place like Nia, a thriving oasis kingdom on the southern Silk Road that flourished for centuries before its final breath around the year 400 AD. Walking into its ruins is like stepping into a photograph. The dry, sterile air of the desert has not just preserved buildings, it has preserved moments. It is a Pompeii of the Silk Road. You walk through what was once a street. The sand is soft underfoot, muffling your steps. To your left and right are the remains of houses. They are not stone, but wood and wattle landau. The timber frames are still standing, their wood a dark, rich brown, seasoned by 1,500 years of dry air. You can see the intricate joinery, the careful craftsmanship, You step into one of these silent homes. The roof is gone, but the walls remain. In the corner, a hearth, its clay still blackened by the last fire ever set within it. Leaning against the wall is a wooden chair, elegant and simple, looking as though its owner just stood up and walked out. In what was once an office or a study, the sand has been swept away to reveal a writing desk, and on it a wooden pen, an inkwell, and a stack of wedge-shaped wooden slips, the stationery of the time left unwritten. The true treasure of these cities is not gold or jade, but these small, forgotten pieces of daily life. Archaeologists at Nia discovered hundreds of documents written in an ancient script called Kharosthi. They are not grand histories of kings and queens. They are the city's paperwork, and in their mundane detail, they bring a lost world to life. One document is a legal contract meticulously detailing the sale of a vineyard, specifying its size, the number of vines, and the price paid. Another is a worried letter from a man on a journey, writing home to his wife, asking about the children and the state of the livestock. There are tax records, court summons, even a complaint filed by one man against another for the theft of a donkey. These are the voices of the city whispering to us across the centuries. We learn of their worries, their arguments, their commerce. We feel the texture of their lives. In one house, excavators found a mousetrap, still set, a silent testament to a timeless domestic annoyance. In another, the garden was so perfectly preserved that the withered, mummified apricots and peaches still clung to the branches of their dead trees. And here, in these homes, the true nature of the Silk Road reveals itself. In a single dwelling, you might find a beautiful piece of Chinese silk, a fragment of a Roman-style glass bottle, a small woolen rug with a pattern from Persia, and a wooden carving of a figure that looks remarkably like a Greek god. It was a world where east, west, north, and south did not just meet. They lived together under one roof. Further north, at the edge of the Lop Nur salt marsh, lies another, even more ancient site, the kingdom of Lulan. And it is here that the desert has preserved its most haunting and profound secrets. Here, the sand has not just kept the homes, but the people themselves. Imagine the archaeologists carefully brushing away the sand from a simple grave. The coffin is fashioned from a hollowed-out log shaped like a boat. As they lift the lid, there is no skeleton, no dust. This is the famous beauty of Lulan. She is not a queen, but an ordinary woman who was laid to rest here nearly 4,000 years ago, long before even Zheng Qian's journey. She lies peacefully, as if in a deep sleep. Her face is serene. You can see her high cheekbones, her fine, straight nose, her long eyelashes resting gently on her skin. Her auburn hair is neatly braided and tucked into a tall, conical felt hat from which a single feather rises. She is wrapped in a heavy, finely woven woolen cloak with intricate tassels. On her feet are well-made leather boots. She is a silent witness, a thread connecting us to a people who lived and died here to millennia before the birth of Christ. And she and others like her found in the region reveal a startling truth. Her features are not what one might expect. They are distinctly Caucasian. These early inhabitants of the Tarim Basin were likely migrants from the west, part of the great Indo-European migrations. The Silk Road did not just create a multicultural world. It was built upon a land that had been a crossroads of peoples for thousands of years. So what happened to these vibrant cities? Why did the people of Nia leave their letters unwritten and their mousetraps set? The answer lies not in a sword, but in a stream. These oasis cities survived on a delicate, man-made web of irrigation canals, which diverted water from the rivers flowing from the mountains. But rivers are not permanent. Over centuries, they can change their course. The streams that fed Ulan and Nia began to dwindle, and then shifted away entirely. The end would have been slow. A generation would have watched the water level drop each year. They would have dug the wells deeper, extended the canals, fought a losing battle against a thirsty earth. The orchards would have withered first. The fields would have turned to dust. And all the while, the great sand dunes, no longer held back by vegetation, would have begun their slow, silent, relentless march, creeping over the outer walls, filling the lanes, pressing in on the houses. There must have come a day when the last inhabitants looked at their dying city, at the encroaching sea of death, and made the decision to leave. They packed what they could carry and simply walked away, abandoning their homes, their memories, and their dead to the sand. And the desert, in its patient, silent way, took them. It covered them, protected them, and preserved them. It created a perfect time capsule, a silent snapshot of a world where cultures mingled and life clung to a fragile thread of water, waiting for us to come and listen to its story. Segment 4. A Day in Samarkand, the crossroads of the world. The journey of the caravan is long and arduous. Its purpose, however, is not the journey itself, but the destination. Let us leave the dust of the road and the silence of the desert behind us. Let us arrive, at last, in one of the jewels of the Silk Road, a city whose name alone was a synonym for exotic splendor. Samarkand. We will not enter the city as a weary guard, but as one who reaps the rewards of that guard's vigilance. Imagine yourself now as a wealthy merchant, a Sogdian perhaps, whose family has mastered the currents of trade for generations. Your day does not begin with the ache of cold ground. but with the soft light of morning filtering through a carved wooden screen into your bedchamber, you awaken not to the grumble of camels, but to the gentle musical sound of water splashing in the fountain of your private courtyard. Your home is not a tent, but a spacious, sprawling house built around this central garden. The walls are thick, made of earth and plaster, keeping the rooms cool and quiet. The air smells of blooming roses and night-blooming jasmine from the garden below. You rise and walk barefoot on a thick, soft carpet from Herat, its intricate patterns a map of paradise under your feet. Servants bring you a basin of warm, scented water to wash. You dress not in rough spun wool, but in fine cotton and silk. A comfortable robe of deep blue silk embroidered with golden thread falls around you. Your breakfast is laid out in a shaded alcove overlooking the courtyard. There is no hard, stale bread here. Instead, you break off a piece of warm, fluffy naan, fresh from the clay tandoor oven in your kitchens. You dip it into a bowl of thick yogurt with honey and pistachios. There are bowls of fresh figs, pomegranates, and sweet melons. You sip on hot, fragrant tea, brewed with spices that have traveled 1,000 miles from the south, served in a delicate porcelain cup that has traveled 2,000 miles from the east. This is a life built by the Silk Road. Every texture, every taste, every scent in your morning routine is a testament to the vast network that converges on this city. After your meal, it is time to attend to business. You step out from the quiet sanctuary of your home into the streets of Samarkand. The city is a living, breathing organism. The main thoroughfares are wide and paved with stone. You see people from every corner of the known world. Turkic nomads with their high cheekbones and leather boots stride past Persian scholars with neat beards and fine turbans. A group of Nestorian Christian traders from Syria converse loudly near a saffron-robed Buddhist monk from the east, who walks with serene detachment. You hear a dozen languages spoken in the chorus of a single Bloxogdian: Persian, Turkic, Arabic, Chinese, Sanskrit. Your destination, the heart of the city, a magnificent public square, flanked by 3 grand madrasas, their facades a breathtaking explosion of azure, turquoise, and gold tilework. The geometric patterns and swirling calligraphy seem to capture the very motion of the heavens. But your business is in the sprawling bazaar that radiates out from this grand center. You enter the covered market, and the sensory world intensifies. Yet it is not chaotic. It is an ordered symphony of commerce. The air is thick with a complex perfume of spices, the sharp scent of cloves, the warm sweetness of cinnamon, the earthy aroma of cumin and turmeric piled high in great sacks. You walk through the aisle of the textile merchants, Here, bales of raw silk from China, so fine they seem to float, are stacked next to bolts of heavy, richly dyed wool from Khorasan. You see fine linen from Egypt and delicate cotton from India, printed with intricate block patterns. You run your hand over a piece of silk brocade, feeling the raised patterns of dragons and phoenixes woven with shimmering gold thread. You move on to the workshops of the artisans. You hear the rhythmic tap-tap of metalworkers hammering silver into ornate bowls and pitchers. You watch a craftsman setting tiny pieces of lapis lazuli into a wooden box. Samarkand is not just a place where goods are traded. It is a place where they are transformed. The raw materials of the world are brought here to be perfected by its master craftsmen. In a quiet corner of the market, you conduct your business. You meet with a caravan master who has just arrived from the east, his face weathered by the taklamakan. Over cups of tea, you negotiate the price for a shipment of musk and rhubarb. The conversation is polite, unhurried, a delicate dance of numbers and offers. Later, you speak with a merchant preparing a caravan to travel west to Persia and beyond. You arrange for him to carry your investment of paper and ceramics, two of Samarkand's own famous products. Your wealth is not in a vault. It is constantly in motion, strung out in a fragile 1,000-mile-long line of camels and men. In the afternoon, your focus shifts from commerce to culture. As a leading merchant, you are also a patron of the arts and sciences. You might visit one of the great madrasas, not as a student, but as a benefactor. You walk through its cool, arched hallways, listening to the murmur of scholars debating philosophy or reciting poetry. Perhaps you make your way to the hills overlooking the city, to the most incredible structure in all of Central Asia, the observatory of Ola Beg, the grandson of the great conqueror Timur. Ola Beg was a sultan who preferred the company of astronomers to generals. Here, you might find him surrounded by the greatest scientific minds of the age, meticulously mapping the stars with colossal instruments. You listen as they discuss the precise length of the year or the position of a distant planet. In Samarkand, the wealth generated by trade fuels the quest for knowledge. The city is a crossroads, not just of goods, but of ideas. As evening falls, you return to your home. The courtyard is now lit by the soft glow of oil lamps. You are hosting a dinner. Your guests reflect the city itself. At your table sits the Nestorian Christian trader you saw in the street, a Persian poet whose verses are prized in the courts of Shiraz, and a quiet Buddhist scholar on a pilgrimage from China. The meal is a feast, a map of your trade routes on a platter. There is a pilaf of rice and lamb, fragrant with spices from the Indian Ocean. There are dumplings inspired by Chinese cuisine, fish from the Oxus River, and pastries filled with nuts and honey, a recipe from the caliphate in Baghdad. The conversation flows as easily as the grape wine from the Fergana Valley. You speak of politics in the distant Ming court, of new philosophical ideas from Persia, of the price of spices in Alexandria. There is no animosity here, no conflict of faith or culture. There is only a shared curiosity, a mutual respect born of commerce and intellectual exchange. Later, after your guests have departed, you sit alone in your courtyard. The air is cool and still. You look up past the tiled rooftops at the immense, clear sky, the same sky that hangs over the desperate caravan guard in the desert. You are a part of the same vast system, but your experience could not be more different. Your life is one of comfort, of beauty, of intellectual ferment. You are living at the very center of the world, in a city made brilliant by the convergence of a dozen civilizations. A city built by the courage of men like Zhang Qiang and paid for by the suffering of men guarding the caravans, all connected by a fragile thread of silk. And as you retire for the night, you feel a sense of profound security, a deep peace, knowing that you are a vital part of this great pulsing heart of the world. And so, our journey along the Silk Road comes to its end for the night. We have walked in the footsteps of a caravan guard, feeling the ache in his bones, the dust in his throat, and the constant wearing tension of his watch. We have felt the immense hardship that was the price of every precious bolt of silk. We traveled back in time to the very beginning and followed the unwavering diplomat, Zhang Qiang. We witnessed his 13-year ordeal, his capture, his patience, his escape, and saw how his personal quest, a diplomatic failure, unintentionally mapped a new world and opened the greatest trade route in history. We then stood in the silent, sand-swept ruins of lost cities. We felt the ghostly presence of those who lived and thrived on the edge of the sea of death. Their lives preserved in stunning detail, only to be erased by the slow, quiet shifting of a river and the sands of time. And finally, we found rest and splendor in Samarkand, the vibrant heart of the network. We saw how the hardship of the road was transformed into a life of immense beauty, culture, and intellectual curiosity, a city that was a true crossroads of the world. The Silk Road was more than a path for trade. It was a nervous system for the ancient world, carrying pain and knowledge and wealth, and faith along its fragile, sprawling tendrils. It was a story of human struggle, of endurance, and of the unquenchable desire to connect, to learn, and to exchange. But that story is for another time. The caravan has reached its final destination for the night. The fires have been banked. The guards have taken their posts. The stars wheel silently over the desert, over the lost cities, and over the quiet courtyards of Samarkand. Their world of hardship and splendor can now fade away. Let the dust of history settle. Let the voices of the past grow quiet. You are no longer on that ancient road. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are here now in your own quiet place of rest. There are no dangers to watch for, no miles to walk tomorrow. There is only the gentle weight of your blankets, the softness of your pillow, and the slow, easy rhythm of your own breathing. Allow your mind to let go of the story. If any thoughts remain, just watch them drift by like clouds in the vast desert sky. There is nothing you need to hold on to. It is time to rest. Time to let the darkness be a soft, welcome blanket. Time to sleep. Sleep now. Hello and welcome. Settle into your quiet space and let the noise of the modern world begin to dissolve. Tonight, our journey takes us to feudal Japan, a land that lives vividly in our imagination. We see images of noble samurai in gleaming armor, of serene temples nestled in bamboo groves, and of the delicate pink of cherry blossoms drifting on the wind. But this is only the surface, the story told in painted screens and epic poems. Beneath this layer of high art and high drama lies the foundation upon which that entire world was built, the land itself, and the millions who toiled upon it. Their stories are not often told. They are written not in ink, but in the furrows of the fields and the lines on a farmer's face. Tonight, we will explore that Japan. We will feel the rhythm of life dictated by the seasons, not by the call to battle. We will step into the world of the peasant, the novelist, the spy, and the lord, to understand the quiet, complex realities of their time. So, let your breathing slow. Let your mind drift from its moorings. There is nothing to do now but listen and allow the simple, steady pulse of a forgotten history to guide you toward rest. Our journey begins in the mud and water of a rice paddy, under the heat of a rising sun. Imagine your world is defined by the earth beneath your feet, not in an abstract, poetic sense, but in the most literal way imaginable. You are a nomad, a farmer, a peasant in medieval Japan, and your life is tethered to a small plot of land, to the cycle of the seasons, and to the whims of the weather. Your day begins not with a gong, but with the first pale light filtering through the paper screen of your small, thatched-roof hut. The air is cool and damp. The floor is packed earth. Your world is one of textures. The rough weave of your hemp clothing, the smooth, worn wood of your tools, and soon the feeling of cold, wet mud enveloping your ankles. In the spring, the real work begins. The rice paddies, your lifeblood, have been flooded. You wade into the knee-deep water, a bundle of bright green rice seedlings in your hand. The work is back-breaking. Hour after hour, you bend from the waist, your back a tight bow of constant strain, planting each individual seedling into the mud below. You work in a line with others from your villager family, your neighbors. There is little talk. The only sounds are the rhythmic splash of hands entering the water, the gentle squelch of mud, and the distant call of a bird. The sun climbs higher, beating down on your straw hat, its heat reflecting off the water's surface into your face. Summer brings a different kind of toil. The rice grows tall, but so do the weeds that would choke it. You move through the humid paddies, the air thick with the buzzing of insects, and pull the weeds by hand, one by one. It is tedious, endless work, but every weed removed is a small victory, a small assurance that the crop might thrive. Your days are long, dictated by the sun. You work until dusk paints the sky, and your muscles burn with a familiar, deep ache. Then comes autumn. The fields are a sea of gold, a beautiful sight that brings not relief, but a sense of urgency. The harvest must be brought in before the autumn typhoons arrive. Armed with a simple iron sickle, you cut the stalks of rice, bundle after bundle. The work is frantic. Once cut, the rice must be thresh-beaten against wooden frames to separate the precious grain from the stalk. Your hands become calloused and sore, your body weary to its core. And after all this work, after months of sweat and strain, the most difficult day arrives. The tax collector. He is a samurai or an official sent by your local lord, the daimyo. He comes with ledgers and measuring boxes. You watch in silence as he assesses your harvest. The tax, the nengu, is not paid in coin, but in rice, the very fruit of your labor. 40, 50, sometimes even 60% of your entire harvest is taken. It is piled onto carts and hauled away, destined for the storehouses of the Lord's castle. You are left with what remains to feed your family for an entire year. The white rice you so carefully cultivated is now a luxury you will rarely eat. Your own diet will consist of millet, barley, and whatever vegetables and foraged plants you can grow. With rice saved for special occasions or to ward off sickness, your life is also governed by a rigid social order. When you walk along a path and see a samurai approaching, your reaction is immediate and instinctual. You move off the road into the grass or the dirt. You bow low, your head touching the ground, your eyes downcast. You do not speak unless spoken to. You wait, frozen in deference, as you hear the soft rustle of his silk kimono, the quiet clinking of the two swords at his hip. You feel his gaze pass over you, a moment of silent judgment. There is a constant, low-level fear, an understanding that your life has little value compared to his. When he has passed and the sound of his footsteps has faded, you can breathe again. The threats are not just from above. A year of bad weather, too little rain, or too much can lead to a failed harvest. A failed harvest leads to famine, a quiet, creeping disaster that can haunt a whole village. And in times of war or unrest, when the daimyo's power weakens, bandits Nobusha can become a plague upon the countryside, a danger on any lonely road. Your day ends as it began, with a fading light. You return to your hut, share a simple meal with your family, and surrender to an exhaustion so profound it feels like a physical weight. There is no grand narrative to your life, no saga or adventure. There is only the rhythm of the seasons, the ache in your back, the feel of the earth, and the quiet hope that the next harvest will be enough to survive. This is the silent, unending, and boring history that fed an entire nation. The life of the Japanese peasant was a world of physical reality, of mud and muscle, sun and season. It was a life lived almost entirely in the present, focused on the immediate, tangible needs of survival. But at the very same time, in a completely different sphere of Japanese society, there existed a world of pure abstraction. It was a world lived indoors, behind screens and sliding doors. A world of poetry, of subtle gestures, of unspoken emotions, and of overwhelming, beautiful melancholy. And it was in this cloistered, rarefied air that a woman, constrained by her gender and class, used her keen intellect and quiet observations to create something entirely new to the world. This is the story of Murasaki Shikibu and the birth of the novel. The Heian period, from the late 8th to the late 12th century, was an era of extraordinary peace and artistic flowering in Japan. The imperial court, centered in Heiankyo, modern-day Kyoto, had turned inward. The frantic nation-building and external conflicts of previous eras gave way to a focus on aesthetic refinement. A person's worth was judged not by their skill with a sword, but by their ability to compose a perfect poem, to recognize a subtle blend of incense, or to match the colors of their layered robes to the season. It was a world of immense, delicate beauty and deep, existential boredom. Into this world, around the year 973, a girl was born into a minor branch of the powerful Fujiwara clan. We do not know her real name. Murasaki Shikibu was a nickname she acquired at court. Her father was a respected scholar and provincial governor. In an age where women's education was typically limited to the arts of poetry, music, and Japanese calligraphy, Murasaki's father recognized her brilliant, inquisitive mind. He allowed her to secretly listen in on her brother's lessons in the Chinese classics, the foundation of all serious scholarship, and a domain strictly reserved for men. He is said to have once sighed, "If only you were a boy, how fortunate I would be. Despite her intellect, Murasaki's path was limited. She married, had a daughter, but was widowed after only a few years. Seeking a secure and stimulating environment, she entered the service of Empress Chich at the imperial court. Here, her life became a series of quiet, endless rituals. Days were spent attending the Empress, engaging in witty conversation, exchanging poems, and meticulously observing the complex web of courtly relationships. It was a world of immense luxury, but also of profound constraint. The women of the court were largely confined to their quarters. Their view of the outside world often limited to what they could see through the slats of bamboo blinds. It was in this gilded cage that Murasaki began to write. The court was a hotbed of literary production, but it was mostly diaries and poems, short forms capturing fleeting moments. Murasaki embarked on something far more ambitious. She began to weave together stories, characters, and observations into a vast, sprawling narrative. She called it the Tale of Genji. The Tale of Genji is not a story of battles or heroic deeds. It is a story of feelings, of relationships, of the subtle play of light and shadow on the human heart. It follows the life and loves of its protagonist, the shining prince, Hikaru Genji, the impossibly handsome and talented son of an emperor. Through his many romantic entanglements, Murasaki explores the full spectrum of human emotion: longing, love, jealousy, betrayal, and the deep, pervasive sadness the Japanese call mono no aware, gentle. Poignant awareness of the transience of all things. Her creation was revolutionary. She wrote in Japanese script the woman's hand, which was considered less formal than the Chinese script used by men for official documents. This allowed her to capture the nuances of spoken language and inner thought with a new kind of psychological realism. Her characters are not simple archetypes. They are complex, flawed, and deeply human. We feel Genji's charm, but we also see his selfishness. We understand the passions of the women he pursues, but we also feel their suffering and their frustration within a society that gives them little agency. The tale was likely written in installments over several years on scrolls of paper. Murasaki would read new chapters aloud to the Empress and the other ladies waiting. Her story became a sensation at court. Everyone was eager to follow the latest exploits of Prince Genji, to see which lady he would court next, to gossip about the parallels between the fictional characters and real people at court. The tale was so popular that, according to Murasaki's own diary, other ladies would try to steal her draft manuscripts to read ahead. The Tale of Genji is a monumental work, over 1,000 pages long in translation, with more than 400 characters. It is a detailed, almost encyclopedic portrait of Heian court life. We learn a about the clothes they wore, the games they played, the rituals they followed, the incense they burned. But its true genius lies in its deep psychological insight. Long before European writers, Murasaki was exploring the inner lives of her characters, their hidden motivations, their private sorrows. She understood that the smallest gesture, the way a sleeve was draped, the wording of a poem, a glance from behind a fan, could convey a world of meaning. Murasaki Shikibu, the quiet lady-in-waiting, had created a masterpiece. She gave a voice to the silent interior world of the Heian court, and in doing so, she invented a new form of storytelling. The tale of Genji is widely considered the world's first novel, a work of astonishing scope and sensitivity that stands as a testament to a brilliant mind that refused to be limited by the constraints of her time. She turned her quiet observations into a timeless and universal exploration of the human condition. From the brightly lit but emotionally shadowed world of the Heian court, our journey now moves into a different kind of darkness, the literal, tactical darkness of the night. The history of Japan is often seen as a conflict between two overt forces, the cultured nobility and the armored samurai, but operating in the spaces between them, in the shadows of castles and on secret midnight missions, was another kind of warrior, one whose currency was not honor or poetry, but information, infiltration, and fear. They are known to us as the ninja, but their true history is far more complex and interesting than the superhuman myths we see today. It is the history of the shinobi. The popular image of the ninja is a fixed and familiar one. A warrior clad head to toe in black pajamas, performing impossible acrobatics, throwing shuriken and disappearing in a puff of smoke. While this makes for exciting entertainment, the historical reality of the shinobi word, which more accurately translates to one who steals away, or one who endures, is a story of espionage, guerrilla warfare, and practical covert operations. The origins of the shinobi are murky, but they seem to have emerged as a distinct class of agents during the turbulent period of the 15th and 16th centuries, the Sengoku, or Warring States period. As powerful daimyo battled for control of Japan, the need for reliable intelligence became paramount. Knowing the layout of an enemy's castle, the morale of their troops, or the loyalty of their generals could be far more valuable than 1,000 samurai on the battlefield. This was the primary role of the shinobi. They were spies and scouts. Far from wearing a conspicuous black uniform, a shinobi's greatest tool was disguise. A shinobi on a mission to infiltrate a castle wouldn't try to climb the walls in the dead of night. If they could simply walk through the front gate, they would disguise themselves as a traveling merchant, a wandering monk, a gardener, or a servant. Their goal was to blend in, to become invisible, by being perfectly ordinary. They would spend days, weeks, or even months in a location, gathering information, observing routines, identifying weaknesses, and listening to gossip in the kitchens and stables places where true intelligence could often be found. The training for a shinobi, known as ninjutsu, was therefore not just about combat. It was a comprehensive education in survival and subterfuge. It included skills in geography, meteorology, lockpicking, pharmacology, and psychology to better manipulate and deceive their targets. They were masters of what we would now call covert entry and information gathering. Of course, combat and sabotage were also part of their skill set. When espionage failed or was not the objective, the shinobi could be employed as saboteurs or assassins. Their methods favored stealth and surprise over a direct confrontation. They might sneak into a castle at night to set fires, creating chaos and panic before a major battle. Or they might be tasked with a targeted assassination, using poison or a blade in the dark. Their aim was to accomplish the mission and escape unseen. A direct fight with a samurai was a last resort, and often a sign of a failed mission. Their legendary tools were also rooted in practicality. The shuriken, or throwing star, was not a primary weapon for killing, but rather a distraction used to make a guard flinch or look away for a critical second. The kama, a small sickle, was a common farming tool, which meant it wouldn't arouse suspicion if a shinobi was disguised as a peasant. Grappling hooks and rope ladders were used for scaling walls, and small cat-like claws worn on the hands and feet, called shuko and ashiko, could provide extra grip. The iconic smoke bomb was a real tool, a mixture of gunpowder and other materials packed into a shell, used to create a blinding, disorienting cloud to cover an escape. The most famous shinobi strongholds were in the provinces of Iga and Koga, mountainous and remote regions that bred a culture of independence and self-reliance. Here, families developed and passed down their unique ninjutsu traditions for generations. These were not vast, shadowy clans, but rather networks of local warriors, the Ji samurai, who honed their skills in guerrilla warfare to protect their own lands before hiring them out to the highest bidder. We know much of this from historical texts that survived from the era. Manuals like the Bunsen Shukai, written in the 17th century, are not mystical texts, but practical field guides. They detail techniques for infiltration, recipes for explosives and poisons, methods for predicting the weather, and philosophies on how to use deception and psychology to one's advantage. They are the textbooks of a secret and dangerous trade. The legend of the ninja began to grow. After Japan was unified in the 17th century, and the age of constant warfare ended in the peace of the Edo period, storytellers and woodblock artists began to embellish the tales of the shinobi, transforming them from practical spies into the supernatural, black-clad figures of myth. Their real history as masters of disguise, information, and psychological warfare was replaced by a more exciting but less accurate fantasy. The true shinobi was not a superhuman demon of the night, but a patient, intelligent, and highly skilled professional who understood that the quietest whisper could be more powerful than the loudest sword. We have moved from the field to the court to the shadows. Our final journey takes us to the place that dominated the landscape of feudal Japan. Both physically and politically, the castle. From these great fortresses of wood and stone, a single man ruled over vast territories, commanded armies of samurai, and lived a life of extraordinary opulence, intricate ritual, and constant mortal peril. This was the world of the daimyo, the great lords who were the true power brokers of the age. To be a daimyo in the Sengoku period was to live at the center of a spider's web. Your castle was your stronghold, your administrative center, and your home, a symbol of your power projected across the land. From the outside, it was a formidable military structure, with high stone walls, massive gates, and a towering central keep, the tenshu, designed to withstand a siege. But inside those walls was a world of refined culture and deadly politics. A daimyo's day would begin early, not with manual labor, but with the rituals of his rank. After rising and dressing in fine silk robes, his morning might be spent in his private chambers, practicing calligraphy. The act of grinding the ink stick on the stone, the feel of the brush on the paper, the focus required to create a perfect character. This was a form of meditation, a way to cultivate the discipline and inner calm required of a ruler. Following this, his day would become a series of audiences and administrative tasks. He would meet with his senior retainers and advisors in the castle's main audience hall. The floors would be covered in pristine tatami mats, the walls adorned with painted screens depicting serene landscapes or fierce tigers. Here, sitting on a raised platform to signify his superior status, he would receive reports. He would hear about the state of the rice harvest, which determined his wealth. He would listen to petitions from local villages, dispensing justice in disputes. He would review reports from his spies, perhaps delivered by a shinobian. The movements and intentions of his neighboring rivals. Every decision he made, from a tax decree to a trade agreement, had to be carefully weighed, considering its impact on his power and the delicate balance of alliances. The afternoon might be dedicated to cultural pursuits that were also, in their own way, expressions of power. He might host a tea ceremony, a chenoyu. This was far more than just drinking tea. It was a highly ritualized, aesthetic performance. Every element was carefully chosen to reflect the host's taste and sophistication. the simple, rustic beauty of the tea bowl, the choice of flower arrangement, the specific blend of powdered green tea. To be invited to a daimyo's private tea ceremony was a sign of great favor. To be a master of the ceremony was to show that you were not just a brute warrior, but a man of culture and refinement. Alternatively, he might spend time practicing martial arts in the castle's dojo. While he might no longer fight on the front lines himself, mastery of the sword, the bow, and the spear was essential to his identity as a warrior lord. It kept his body strong and his mind sharp, and it served as an example to his samurai retainers. His life was a tapestry woven from two threads, the bun and the bu, the arts of peace and the arts of war. He had to be both a cultured poet and a ruthless strategist, a serene tea master and a decisive commander. But beneath the veneer of high culture and absolute authority lay a constant current of danger. The world of the daimyo was one of perpetual rivalry. The neighboring lord who sent you a gift of a fine sword could be plotting to invade your lands next season. The general you trusted to lead your army could be secretly negotiating with your enemies. Betrayal was an ever-present threat. For this reason, a daimyo's life within his own castle was highly controlled. The food he ate was likely tested for poison. His personal chambers were in the most secure part of the castle, often protected by secret nightingale floors, designed to chirp and squeak at the slightest footstep to warn of approaching assassins. His family life was also a political calculation. His wife was usually the daughter of another lord, their marriage a strategic alliance to secure a border or gain a powerful ally. His sons were his heirs, but they could also be his rivals, impatient to take power for themselves. His daughters were valuable assets to be married off to seal other alliances. Love and personal affection were luxuries that often had to be secondary to political necessity. The life of a daimyo was a life of profound contradiction. He was surrounded by immense wealth and beauty, but could trust almost no one. He was an absolute ruler within his domain, yet he was a pawn in a much larger game of power. He commanded armies that could conquer provinces, but he could be brought down by a drop of poison in his sake. His castle was his fortress, but it was also his kaja, gilded, beautiful cage where a single mistake could mean the end of his clan and his life. Our journey through feudal Japan has taken us from the muddy fields to the fragrant halls of power. We have felt the peasant's exhaustion, the novelist's quiet genius, the shinobi's stealthy tread, and the daimyo's perilous reign. We have seen a society of rigid structure and deep complexity, where lives of unimaginable hardship existed alongside lives of incredible refinement. These are the stories that lie beneath the surface, the essential threads that, when woven together, create the rich and fascinating tapestry of the past. Now, as the world of shoguns and samurai recedes, let your mind return to the present. The struggles and intrigues of that distant time are gone. All that remains is the peace of this room, the comfort of your bed, and the quiet of the night. There's nothing left to analyze, nothing to hold on to. Simply let go and allow yourself to drift into the deep and tranquil sleep you deserve.